Immigration this week, the president and Mitt Romney spoke to the National Association of Latino elected and appointed officials. In Orlando, hotbed center of a battleground state where there are a lot of Puerto Rican votes up for grabs. How did Mitt Romney do in fixing his problem with Hispanic voters, which is rather profound?
I don't think it's fixed. He nibbled at the edges of the issue. He went as far as I think he thought his Republican base could go. He said he wanted to find common ground for a solution. Is there a lot of common ground on Capitol Hill? Have I missed that? I don't think after President Obama's rather bold plan to allow hundreds of thousands of undocumented workers to remain in this country if they meet certain tests, I don't think it met that, and I don't think Latino voters are that impressed.
Reid, what do you think about Romney's approach, which appears to be basically, I'm not going to pander, I'm going to, and in part he's obviously circumscribed by what he said in the Republican primaries. I'm just going to talk about the economy, and that's my main message anyway.
And remember that in the Republican primaries, immigration was the one area in which he was to the right of everybody else without having to change much of his position. He went after Rick Perry on immigration. He went after Newt Gingrich on immigration. Both of them sort of imploded in a couple of debates over their own less than harsh, I should say, less than comprehensive enforcement first immigration approaches. Romney never fell into that trap. He's been very careful about it, and now it's costing him in the general election. What an irony.
Right. And Roger, does the president have any thing to worry about with Hispanic voters? Mitt Romney, one of his messages was the president takes you for granted. There are certainly a lot of Hispanic leaders who said, we expected this president to deal with immigration reform. Any downside for President Obama?
Not among Latinos that I can see. The DREAM Act, which is what they would like, is stuck in Congress. The president can't pry it loose. If the Republicans want to join the Democrats in passing it, and some did, everyone would be happy. But I think Latinos and everybody else in America recognizes that Congress has become this sort of place where dreams go to die. It doesn't do anything. And I think President Obama, who leads by huge margins in Latino polls, has established a bond with Latino voters, and it could mean a difference in a lot of toss-up states.
Reid, talk about Florida a little bit. It would matter. Florida, Colorado, Nevada, probably the three biggest ones in which the Hispanic vote matters. New Quinnipiac poll has the president up by 4 in Florida. What do you make of that?
Florida is the one place where the Hispanic bloc is not completely in the Democratic camp. In the other states you mentioned, Colorado, Nevada, most of the Hispanic immigrants are from Central America, from Mexico. In Florida, there's a heavily Cuban influence. Obviously you've got the 3 Cuban-American lawmakers in South Florida. They're all Republicans. They have, the Cuban voters have had a long affinity with Republicans. And in a series of surveys that came out today from a national Hispanic organization that does sort of the best polling on, as a Seattleite, I'm proud to say based at the University of Washington, they find that in Florida it's the closest. It was about a 10-point advantage for President Obama. That's about where he needs to be to win the state in terms of where he wins Hispanic voters. If he can increase that margin a little bit, you mentioned the growing Puerto Rican population in the state, that's where his margin will come from. And of course, he needs those voters. The Democratic coalition across the country is increasingly diverse, whereas the Republican coalition is more and more homogenized. That's sort of the larger, decades-long story of the evolution of American politics.